I remember the way she said it like I'd committed some crime. You're not being supportive of our family. All because I had a doctor's appointment. That's all it was, just a routine checkup after my knee surgery. But somehow, taking one weekend for myself suddenly meant I no longer counted as their mother. I was sitting on the edge of my bed when the call came. The Friday sun had just started to dip west, and I'd finished folding a small basket of towels, still warm, still carrying the soft scent of lavender. When Lauren lit up my phone, I hesitated. She never called unless she needed something. "Hey Mom," she began, skipping past any kind of hello. "Can you take the baby this weekend? We've got that work retreat in Asheville, and Emma's staying with Nate's folks. We'll be back late Sunday." I told her no as gently as I could. I explained that I had an appointment Saturday morning. Nothing serious, just a follow-up, but the timing was tight. And the truth was I was tired. My knee still throbbed most mornings, and 2 days chasing after a 10-month-old was more than I could manage right now. The silence on her end stretched, then turned sharp. "Wow. Okay. I guess you're just not being very supportive of our family." The words hit me like a slap. I almost reminded her of the thousands I'd given for their down payment, the hours I'd spent rocking her babies while she napped, the nights I stayed when Tommy was colicky. But I kept my mouth shut. What good would it do? "I didn't expect this from you," she added, her tone colder. "We really needed you this weekend. I don't know what we're going to do now." "You're their parents," I said softly. "You'll figure it out." She hung up without another word. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a text. "Please don't come by the house anymore. It's time for some boundaries. We've changed the locks." I read it once, then again and again. Surely I was misreading. My lips pressed together so tight they trembled, and my heart beat so hard I could hear it in my ears. Not even a call, just a message. After all the years, after all the giving, she shut me out with a few words. Like I was dangerous. Like I was a stranger. I drove there anyway. Instinct, disbelief, maybe both. The neighborhood looked the same as ever. Quiet streets. Bikes left on lawns. Flags drooping in the summer heat. But something had shifted. Something deep. I parked across from their pale brick two-story, the house I'd helped them buy. And I just sat, staring at the front door. The same door Lauren and I had painted the day she moved in, her belly round with Emma, her eyes heavy but hopeful. We'd picked a deep green, and she joked it looked too grown up. But now that door didn't open. Not when I rang once. Not when I rang twice. The stroller sat neatly folded on the porch. One of Emma's tiny sneakers lay forgotten under the swing. I heard footsteps inside. Whispered voices. Someone peeked out from behind the upstairs curtain. I rang a third time, out of habit more than hope. Nothing. I tried the key. The key I'd carried for 5 years, the one they'd given me just in case. It wouldn't turn. Stuck and caught. She'd really changed the locks. I walked back to my car, careful, as though I were carrying something fragile. I couldn't tell if the shaking in me was grief or anger. Maybe both. I sat in the driver's seat, staring at the steering wheel. Then out of nowhere I laughed. Quiet, breathless, almost mad laughter. It came in stutters, wheezes, like I'd lost my mind. Because that's what it felt like. Like I'd slipped into some alternate version of my life where my own daughter decided I wasn't needed. Or worse, wasn't wanted. Every time I stood up for myself, Lauren pulled away. Coldness, silence, distance, and like a fool, I always came crawling back with gifts or apologies I didn't even owe. But not this time. This time I stayed still and let the silence settle. I didn't text her. I didn't explain myself. Instead, I took a deep breath, walked over to the filing cabinet, and pulled out the folder labeled estate. Then I picked up the phone and dialed Alan Rivers. "Can we add a few more things to the list for Tuesday?" I asked. "Of course, Mrs. Joyce," he replied smoothly. "What's on your mind?" "My power of attorney," I said firmly. "I want to revoke it, and I need to make some changes to my will." Tuesday couldn't come fast enough. Until then, I filled the hours the only way I knew how, cleaning. Dusting corners that hadn't seen daylight in months. Scrubbing kitchen grout with vinegar and a toothbrush. Rearranging books I could no longer read but couldn't bear to give away. It felt like preparing for company, except the guest I was readying for would never arrive. That Tuesday morning I woke before the alarm. I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual, brushed my hair smooth, buttoned my soft blue blouse with the little pearls, and even added a touch of lipstick. Not for anyone else, for me. To remember who I was when nobody else was watching. The drive to Alan's office took half an hour, and the whole way I practiced my words in my head. But once I sat across from him in that brown leather chair, the words came without struggle. "I'd like to revoke the power of attorney I gave my daughter," I said, plain as day. Alan blinked, then nodded. "That's not a problem. We'll draft it today. Are you sure, Marilyn?" "Absolutely," I answered. My hands rested steady in my lap. She no longer needs that kind of access to my life. He didn't press for details, and I was grateful. Next, we reviewed my will. The old language was still there. Lauren and Nate as beneficiaries, Emma and Tommy to receive small trusts, the home and accounts all designated to them. "I'd like to change that," I said. Alan tilted his head. "All of it?" "Yes. I want everything placed into a trust for my niece Claire. She's been good to me. Not out of duty but kindness." He nodded again. "We can set that up." So we did. In silence, with papers rustling and pens clicking, I signed each page. With every signature, a little weight lifted from my chest. Before I left, Alan handed me a copy of the revocation. "If your daughter tries to act on your behalf, any bank will reject it." I folded the paper into my bag. "Thank you, Alan." The sky outside was gray, but I felt light, as if I'd stepped into a life where I didn't need anyone else to name my worth. I'd done it myself. When I got home, I called the bank. It took 3 transfers and a long security check before I landed with someone named Derek in senior accounts. "I need to cancel all scheduled transfers to my daughter's accounts," I said firmly. "All of them, ma'am?" he asked after a pause. "I see several recurring payments." "Yes," I said. "All. I'll take care of the penalties." "May I ask the reason for cancellation?" he pressed. I thought about giving a vague excuse, financial restructuring, changes in the family, but instead I told him the truth. "Because I've decided my support doesn't have to come at the cost of my dignity." There was silence, then Derek said softly, "Understood. We'll process that today." When the call ended, I sat very still. The silence in my house wasn't empty anymore. It was clean, reclaimed. The next morning, I went to the bank in person. Not because I doubted Derek, but because some things deserved to be done face to face. I wore my good coat, the one I'd saved for church and weddings. Too warm for it, but it made me feel prepared, presentable. Like a woman who took herself seriously, even if others hadn't for years. The branch was quiet, humming with low voices and printers. A young woman with sleek hair greeted me politely. "I have an appointment with the branch manager," I said. "Your name?" "Marilyn Joyce." She typed, then nodded toward the chairs. "Miss Quinn will see you shortly." When Miss Quinn appeared, sharp-eyed in a blazer, she didn't miss a detail. "Mrs. Joyce, come in." Her office was chilly, but I didn't mention it. "I understand you'd like changes to your accounts?" "Yes. I want all outgoing transfers to my daughter's household canceled. Permanently. And I want to create a new trust." "Do you have a beneficiary in mind?" "My niece Claire Linton," I said without hesitation. "She visits every year. She calls just to say hello. She once drove 2 states to bring me soup when I was sick. She'll use it with care, not entitlement." Miss Quinn nodded and wrote it down. We spent an hour combing through details, percentages, terms, investments. I asked questions. I signed papers. Before I left, I said, "Can you print a list of every transfer I've made to my daughter's family in the last 10 years? She raised a brow but didn't comment. A few minutes later, she handed me a thick stack. Outside, the sun had broken through. I carried the papers against my side, their weight real but not heavy. At home, I laid them out across the dining table. Line after line. My name over and over. Small sums, large ones, groceries, lessons, dental work, car payments, even a water heater. I circled each one in red. Not with shame. Just to remember. 123 transfers in 10 years. And that didn't even count the gifts, the groceries, the babysitting, the nights on their couch, the holidays I cooked and cleaned alone. I stared at the pages and thought. 123 times I said yes. Until now. The phone rang again. I let it roll into voicemail. A few minutes later I pressed play. It was Emma. "Grandma, it's me. I don't really know what's going on, but Mommy's been crying and Daddy's yelling and I miss you. I miss your house and the stories. I don't know. Can I come over sometime? Even if Mommy says no? Her little voice cracked at the end. She didn't sound like a 5-year-old anymore. She sounded older than she had any right to. I stared at the phone long after the message ended, and without thinking I pressed save. I didn't call back, not yet. Instead, I picked up the small yellow notepad on my counter and wrote down her name. Emma. Not as a promise. As a beginning. The next day a letter arrived. A real one, envelope, stamp, handwriting I knew the instant I saw it. Lauren always made her capital J's like crooked 7s. Her 3rd grade teacher had never managed to break her of it. I held that envelope for 5 whole minutes before I opened it. 2 pages, blue ink. No greeting, no dear Mom. Just a first sentence that hit like a slap. I hope you realize what you're doing to this family. I kept reading. She wrote that Nate was furious, that Emma was confused, that the timing of this was awful, that my behavior had become erratic. She said she was hurt but also concerned. She asked if I was depressed, if maybe I needed to talk to someone. She even suggested therapy, lightly, the way people do when they want to wound without looking like they mean it. But she never once mentioned the locks. Never once acknowledged that text. And an apology? Not a word. The last paragraph sealed it. We're still willing to include you in our lives, but only if you're ready to be a team player. Families require sacrifice, Mom. You taught me that. I folded the letter twice, slid it back into the envelope, and carried it to the fireplace. I set it on the grate. I didn't burn it, I didn't need to. I just didn't want it on my table anymore. That night I slept better than I had in weeks. No pills. No tossing like a coin that couldn't land. The morning light came soft through the blinds. I made oatmeal and didn't check my phone. At noon I walked to the mailbox. 2 catalogs. And a postcard from Claire. The Oregon coast stretched across it. Blue sky, high cliffs. Her handwriting, a little messy but warm, said, Aunt Marilyn, thank you for everything. I don't even know what to say except I hope you visit soon. We'll make scones and sit on the porch and pretend the world makes sense. Love, C. I pinned it to the fridge. Later, I cleaned out the front hall closet. Years of odds and ends, Emma's rain boots, Tommy's old rattle, a plastic tub of broken crayons and mismatched socks. Most of it went into a trash bag. Not in anger. Just clarity. At the bottom I found a small square envelope. Inside a drawing from Emma. A purple stick figure house. A green lawn. A crooked sun in the corner. And me in the middle holding her hand. In blocky letters, me in Grandma's home. I smoothed the paper flat and slid it into a folder marked Keep. I didn't need Lauren's permission to remember who I was. That evening, as the golden light stretched across the kitchen floor, I brewed a fresh pot of tea and sat by the window. The phone buzzed again. I didn't move. This was my time now. No obligations. No explanations. Just the quiet dignity of finally refusing to beg for love the right way. It had been more than a year since I'd set foot in the library. Not since I turned in my badge after 42 years of work and 3 more volunteering. I told them my joints ached, that the new computers outran me, that the new director had a smile that felt like she was barely tolerating me. But that Monday something tugged me back. Not guilt. Not loneliness. Just curiosity. I packed my old canvas bag with a notebook and a pen, and I walked the 6 blocks past the bakery, past the empty lot where the movie theater once stood, until I reached the stone building with the wide glass doors. It smelled the same, paper, dust, and that faint lemon polish on the floors. My shoes tapped softly on the tile as I moved through the aisles. Not from pain. From reverence. This had been my second home for most of my life. At the desk sat a red-haired girl with thick glasses, earbuds hanging around her neck. She smiled politely. Hi, can I help you find something? No thank you, I said. Just browsing. I wandered through the shelves. Fiction, large print, local history. Some old titles I knew like neighbors' faces. In the children's corner, a boy no older than 6 read aloud to himself. His mother scrolled on her phone nearby. He had a gap-toothed grin and a proud little voice. I thought of Emma at that age, whispering the endings of books before I turned the last page. This time the memory didn't hurt. It made me smile. Near the back I stopped at the donation cart. Stacks of paperbacks with cracked spines and coffee stains. I used to sort them myself. Are you Marilyn Joyce? A voice asked. I turned. It was the red-haired girl from the desk. Yes, I said. But I'm not staff anymore. I know, she said. But I've heard of you. You ran the summer reading program for what, 20 years? 23, I corrected with a smile. We used to hand out popsicles before the air conditioner worked. She grinned. I'm Elena. Just started here 2 months ago. Honestly, it's overwhelming. Well, I said softly, the Dewey Decimal System hasn't changed. That's something. She laughed. Then, hesitating, asked, would you maybe come in sometime? Help with donations? The backlog's a mess, and I could use another pair of hands. It caught me off guard, being asked for help with something real, something not tied to family or guilt. I'd like that, I said. Her shoulders relaxed. Great. No pressure. Just if you feel like it. I walked home slowly, the breeze cool on my neck. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel heavy. I didn't feel small. I felt useful on my own terms. That night, I opened a fresh notebook and wrote on the first page. Things I still love. Old books. Quiet mornings. Cinnamon tea. Claire's postcards. My own company. Then I added, saying no without apology. The call from Nate came that Thursday while I was trimming the rosemary bush out back. The phone buzzed in my apron pocket. I thought of letting it go, but I answered. His voice was tight, formal. Marilyn, we need to talk. I didn't answer right away. I pinched a sprig of rosemary and dropped it in the compost. We've tried to be patient, he went on. But this is out of hand. What exactly is out of hand? I asked. The money, he snapped. The cancellations. The trust. Lauren's beside herself. She changed the locks on me, Nate. She was upset. I said no to babysitting for one weekend because I had a doctor's appointment. Silence. She felt abandoned, he muttered. She felt inconvenienced, I corrected. And instead of talking to me, she sent a message and changed the locks. She's under pressure. We all are, I said. But not everyone retaliates by cutting off their mother. He exhaled hard. Then his tone shifted. Look, let's be reasonable. You've made your point. But this is hurting Emma. She misses you. She asks about you every night. The words pierced me, not because they were manipulative but because they were true. Still I stayed quiet. Don't you want to fix this? He asked. For her. I took a breath. I want a relationship with my granddaughter. But I won't buy it with silence and money. Not anymore. So what? This is punishment. No, I said calmly. This is a boundary. You made a choice. I'm finally making one of my own. His voice hardened. You're destroying this family. No, I said. I've been holding it together for years. You just never noticed until I stopped. I ended the call. No tears. I turned back to my rosemary. Later, I sat on the back steps with a glass of water, watching the sun slip behind the roofs. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Lauren. Mom, I don't understand what you're doing. This isn't you. It's cruel. You're leaving us in a mess. The mortgage is due. The cards are maxed. Lauren had always said, family takes care of family. And now she was asking, why stop now? I stared at the screen, then opened my notebook and wrote, because I've finally learned that family isn't just who you take care of, it's who takes care of you. The paperwork was finalized that Friday morning. Alan met me at the front desk himself, folder in hand. He didn't ask if I wanted to think again. He didn't offer a pause to reconsider. He simply said, everything's in order, and led me back to his office. We went page by page, my initials here, my full name there, a final signature at the bottom. By the time I handed the pen back, my hand ached. But my shoulders felt lighter than they had in years. You're officially done, Alan said, slipping the last sheet into its folder. No further action needed. I appreciate you, I said quietly. He gave me a small, real smile. You've done a brave thing, Marilyn. Didn't feel brave. It felt overdue. Outside, summer clouds were gathering, the wind lifting the scent of asphalt and leaves. I didn't drive straight home. I stopped at the station and bought a ticket. One-way midweek departure. Destination: the Oregon coast. Claire had offered more than once. Come stay. Come breathe. The guest room's always yours. The ocean's loud enough to drown out everything you don't want to hear. I had always said later. After the holidays. After Emma's birthday. After someone else's needs. But now there were no more excuses. At home I began to pack. Not frantically, just steady. Comfortable shoes. A few warm sweaters. My notebooks. The books I couldn't part with. In the back of the closet, I found the blue scarf Lauren had given me 5 Christmases ago, still wrapped in tissue paper. I pressed it between my hands, then folded it neatly into the donation pile. It was soft, beautiful, but it had never been warm. By evening, a bag sat ready. I scheduled a pickup with the women's shelter. I didn't need keepsakes anymore. I needed space. That night, I stood in my bedroom looking around. The house didn't feel lonelier. It felt paused, like a song left unfinished on purpose. I wrote a note for my neighbor, arranged the mail hold, and went to bed. I slept well. Morning light spilled across the floorboards as I brewed my coffee. For once, the day felt like it belonged entirely to me. At the station, I boarded early, chose a window seat, and watched the city slide away like an old reel of film. Halfway through the ride, I checked my phone. One new message. Lauren again. I heard about the trust. Claire, really? I can't believe you'd leave everything to someone you barely see after everything we've done for you. You've made your choice. I hope it keeps you warm. I read it once. Then I deleted it. No anger, no reply. Just gone. Across the aisle, a little boy hummed to himself as his mother stroked his hair. I watched them for a while. Not with envy, not with pain. Just with peace. 3 hours later, the train pulled into a fog-soft station. Claire was already there, waving with both arms like a child at a parade. When I stepped onto the platform, she wrapped me in a hug that didn't demand explanations. You look taller, she said. I feel it, I told her. She laughed. Come on. I made scones. There's a chair on the porch with your name on it. The drive carried us past tall grass bending in the wind, the salt air rushing through the open windows. Claire's house sat on a bluff high enough to hear the ocean but not see it, the porch wrapping around like arms meant to hold. Inside, the air smelled of cinnamon and clean laundry. Books spilled across tables, chipped mugs filled the sink, and a gray cat named Percy hopped into my lap as if he'd been waiting. I didn't unpack. I didn't need to. Claire had already laid out towels and a sweater on the bed, along with a note. If you want to talk, I'll be in the garden. If you don't, I'll still be there. That first evening, we sat on the porch with a blanket across my knees, a scone in my hand. Claire breathed beside me in silence. Eventually, she asked, Are you all right? I told her the truth. About the locks, the text, the way Lauren's voice changed when I said no. About the folders of receipts, the revoked power of attorney, the new will, the trust. About how I didn't cry as much anymore. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I'd finally learned the difference between grief and guilt. She listened, not with pity but with presence. When I finished, she said, I think you did something women in this family were never taught to do. You chose yourself. I nodded. Took me 74 years. She smiled. Still faster than most. We sat in the dusk until stars blinked awake. Later we made tea. I slept that night with the window open, the ocean moving in and out like breath. The next morning we walked down to the shoreline. My knees protested on the gravel path, but I leaned on Claire's arm and didn't apologize. At the edge of the water, I let the cold salt sting my ankles. This, I said, feels honest. Claire nodded. That's why I never left. That afternoon we baked peach cobbler, played gin rummy on the porch, and teased Percy about his silence on whether cats understand English. By sunset my phone buzzed again. Another message. Different this time. Mom, I don't know how to fix this. I want to, but everything feels broken. Emma won't stop asking about you. She cries at bedtime. Nate doesn't understand why I'm not angrier, but I don't know. I think I miss you. I showed the screen to Claire. She asked, Do you believe her? I believe she misses what I gave her. Is that the same thing? Neither of us answered. I stepped outside, the sky streaked with lavender and gold, gulls circling slowly. For a moment I pictured Lauren at 8 years old barefoot, sticky with popsicle juice, calling, Look, Mom. Every 2 minutes. Then I pictured the locks, the texts, the silence. I couldn't reconcile them. Maybe I wasn't meant to. That night, I whispered to the ocean instead of answering. Not yet. A week passed then too. Claire never hinted I'd overstayed. She added a blanket to the bed, more tea bags to the drawer. We found a rhythm. Slow mornings, quiet afternoons, long evenings on the porch. One message came from Emma. Hi Grandma. Mommy says you're on a trip. I hope you're having fun. I made a picture for you but I don't know where to send it. It's you and me and the big cookies you made last summer. Can you write back soon? I miss you so much. I read it 3 times. Then I wrote, Hi sweetheart. I miss you too. I'm near the ocean. It's loud and beautiful, and there's a cat here who reminds me of our gingerbread stories. You can always send pictures to me. I'll keep them forever. You are in my heart every day. She replied within minutes. Just one word. Yay. I didn't hear from Lauren. Not a word. But something settled inside me. Not bitterness, not longing. Understanding. She had made her choices. I had made mine. One afternoon, Claire came home with a small box. Inside was a brass key on a ribbon. A key, she said, to this house, just in case you ever want to come back. Or never leave. I didn't cry, but I held it like something sacred. That evening I packed a small bag. Not to leave for good, just to visit my own home. Claire drove me to the station without asking when I'd be back. At home, everything was just as I'd left it. Clean. Quiet. Waiting but not needy. I watered the rosemary. Sat on the porch. Brewed my tea. The next day a knock at the door. Not Lauren. Emma. Backpack crooked, drawing folded in her hand. She looked up at me with the same wide eyes I once saw peeking through crib bars. Mommy dropped me off, she said. She said I could stay the weekend if it's okay. I opened the door. Come in. She kicked off her shoes, ran to the fridge, and laughed when she saw Claire's postcard still pinned there. You kept it. Of course I did, I said. That night she curled up beside me on the couch, cocoa in hand, old blanket around her legs. We didn't talk about locks or silence or the weekend that broke the pattern. We read her favorite story, the one with the fox and the moonlight and the line she always whispered with me. Home is where someone waits for you. I kissed her head. And I knew then, I hadn't left her behind. I just stopped leaving myself behind. And if you're hearing this, I want you to know something. It's never too late to draw the line, to protect your peace, to start again on your own terms.